Came to know the Lord at age 13. Lived through my teenage years pretty much as you would hope one would. At the time, I was top of my class in academics. I'd been given a life dream of getting an athletic scholarship to the University of Louisville to run track. So everything was going great, and then the news came that changed my life. My senior year of high school, I got to get involved into a relationship that ended up being inappropriate. Led us to get into marriage because she got pregnant. We did what everybody does back then at that point, was get married. Even though it wasn't probably the right fit, we tried to make it work. Several months into that relationship, into that marriage, there was infidelity on her part. It was a struggle, as you can imagine. As anybody that goes through that, you have the shame, the guilt, the frustration, the challenges with that. I wanted to make the marriage work, so I did what I could. I couldn't talk to any friends about it because I was ashamed of the situation. I couldn't talk to my family because I knew if there was any chance of reconciliation, if they knew, they would struggle to find forgiveness for her. So at that point, I walked with the Lord like I never had before, and He was really the only one there for me to talk to constantly, in prayer constantly, guiding me. My relationship was as strong as it had ever been with the Lord. I continued to try to do everything I thought to make it work, but it just fell apart, and it continued to fall apart. I grew angry with the Lord. I guess that's the best words to use. Frustrated, challenged. My relationship started to fall apart completely with Him because I just felt like I had done everything I thought He was telling me to do, and yet He allowed it to fall apart. A while later, I met Julie again. Julie was now my bride of 20 years. But at the time, we had gone to high school together. We're just friends and had never dated. And she came into my orbit, and we started dating. I got a promotion at work, which moved me from the Louisville, Kentucky area to Indianapolis. At that point, I had custody of my young son. I asked Julie to come and move with me to Indianapolis, which she gladly did to help raise our son. I knew the word. I knew that it was wrong to do that, but at the time, my relationship wasn't there with the Lord, where it wasn't convicting. And I remember, the Bible talks about loving rebukes. And I remember 2 loving rebukes that changed my life. The first one was my grandfather. He was a spiritual leader in my life, one I looked up to. In fact, I have the letter here, but it's over 20 years now. But he sent me this letter, and it was basically telling me, that God created marriage, and as a Christian man, what those responsibilities were, and that I owed it to Julie to live like that, and I owed it to my son to show him how to live. And then probably the tipping point there was my Uncle Joe. My Uncle Joe I saw probably twice a year or so at Christmas or family events. But 2 things I knew about my Uncle Joe is, 1, he loved the Lord, and 2, he loved me. He called me and he told me, he said, Denny, he said, you entered into your previous marriage without the blessings of the Lord. He said, you're about to start off the same way. Do you want to go into a marriage again without His blessing? And I just remember it struck me right between the eyes. And he said it out of love, I think in a way that didn't put me off, completely hit me. Immediately I just said, what am I doing? And I came to Julie and talked with her about it. She didn't know the Lord at the time, but she was drawn, even through the time I was distant with the Lord, she was drawn to me because of my faith. Something was different about me. In fact, she'll tell you, funnily enough, she says, I didn't have morals, but He did, and I wasn't going to mess His morals up. Julie came to know the Lord shortly thereafter, which was awesome. God's blessed us through that time with 2 beautiful children in faith and Christian. And then even though despite my quiver being full, a couple years ago, we were blessed to the gift of adoption, and we've now got Thaxton and Lily. God has been there, and my spiritual maturity has definitely grown through that to understand that He's always been consistent. It's me that has always been up and down in our relationship. And I often question, through that challenge of that I went through, trying to figure out why would I go through a relationship I went through in a divorce. And obviously I know my fault in that, but I thought I never really could share that story. And then in 2007, I had the opportunity to lead a mission trip to Panama. We visited a young lady, and she, I think, had been divorced just for several months and had a young child. And the community kind of disowned her through that. And for the first time in my life, I listened to the call of the Spirit to tell me to tell my story. And, I never had one of those unbelievable testimonies where I was, selling crack on the streets of Chicago and came to know the Lord. No, I just always felt like mine wasn't that big of a deal. And I just opened up and let it flow that night, and it pierced her heart. And she accepted Christ that night. Obviously, God didn't cause anything to happen. He won't let Satan win, and He'll take all the things that happen in your lives if you're willing to be open and use those for His glory, and He did that night. And the excitement of that is knowing that I'll see her one day in heaven because of that opportunity. So, as I think about just over my life, there's been plenty of ups and downs and hills and valleys, but learning through that God has been consistently there for me And now instead of running from him, I draw to him in those times of challenge. So I never felt judged to a point where I couldn't be redeemed, because I know that God is a God of forgiveness. So I never felt too far gone that I couldn't be rescued. And I think that's a challenge with people today that are sitting out, maybe out in the audience today, are thinking, I need to get to a certain point before the Lord will accept me. And that's such a false doctrine. And I hope that if you're out there struggling with that today, that you realize there's nobody in this room more jacked up than me, and He saved me. He can save you.